Delve into a world where justice wears a cloak of darkness and strikes fear in the heart of evildoers. This cinematic gem is intrinsically tied to one of DC Comics' most revered heroes. Clad in sleek black attire, complete with a mysterious mask and billowing cape, our protagonist maneuvers through the shadows with unmatched stealth. His brand of justice is as multifaceted as it is swift, ranging from stern warnings to the ultimate reckoning. Echoing the gallant spirit of Robin Hood and the Lone Ranger, he ensures that any ill-gotten gains are swiftly returned to the rightful owners, the people. Prepare to be enthralled as this vigilante navigates a gritty landscape, battling corruption and championing the cause of the innocent with unwavering resolve. Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today, on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on The Mark of Zorro, 1940. This is a great movie. The story, the acting, and the fencing hold up well. IMDb.com rates this movie a good 7.5. RottenTomatoes.com rates this film at 92% on the tomato meter and 79% on the audience score. Naturally, I feel the second set of scores is the most reflective. Cranky New York Times film critic Bosley Crothers said in a November 4th, 1940 film review, quote, "Your regular moviegoer of late has become more or less blasé over the doings of various Lone Rangers and heroes of the masked Marvel stamp. So there may not be quite the same old punch that there was 20 years ago in this story of the dashing young Spaniard who rode mysteriously through the night in California around 1820, performing great deeds of daring with reckless impudence in order to rid the land of a cruelly oppressive tyrant. The same young fellow, incidentally, posing deceptively as a languid popinjay between forays. And two, we are bound to state that Tyrone Power is no Douglas Fairbanks, and any resemblance which he may bear to his late predecessor in the title role is purely coincidental. Mr. Fairbanks, we can tell you, was really something to see. A swashbuckler who swashed with magnificent arrogance and swished when required with great elan. Mr. Power rather overdoes the swishing, and his swash is more beautiful than bold. Neither does he vault about with the athletic ease of a proper Zorro, and a Zorro without at least one leap from a balcony to the back of a running horse is gravely suspected by us. In spite of all of that, director Ruben Mamoulian has kept the picture in the spirit of romantic make-believe with a lot of elegant trifling, some high fantastic fights and flights, and one Jim Dandy duel between Mr. Power and the villainous Basil Rathbone, which ends about as juicy as anyone could wish. I have some real problems with the previous quote. I feel that Douglas Fairbanks' swashbuckling looks overcranked and rushed. Also, Hollywood fencing master Frank Cavins intentionally staged the action to look like real duels, and acrobatics such as swinging from the chandeliers had no place. The fights were undercranked to around 18 to 20 frames per second instead of the regular 24 frames per second. But the fights appear to flow at the right tempo and didn't seem to be sped up. Actors. We have a great returning lineup today. Tyrone Power was in the lead role as Diego, aka Zorro. Power was first covered in the great film The Razor's Edge, 1946. There's a link below. The beautiful Linda Darnell played Lolita Quintero, niece of the new alcalde. She was playing a 17-year-old in this film, and she was actually 17. Hard to believe. Darnell was first covered in the solid film noir Fallen Angel, 1945. There's a link below. The illustrious Basil Rathbone played the main bad guy, Captain Esteban Pasquale. Rathbone, known for his swashbuckling and playing Sherlock Holmes, was first covered in the classic horror film Son of Frankenstein, 1939. There's a link below. Eugene Pallette played Frey, Padre Philippe. This was very similar to the role of Friar Tuck that he played in The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, when he was first covered. There's a link below. Gail Sundergaard played the role of Inez Quintero, the vain wife of the replacement alcalde. Sondergaard was born in Litchfield, Minnesota in 1899. Her parents both separately immigrated from Denmark before marrying. So I have to assume that Litchfield is near St. Olaf's, the fictional home of Golden Girl Rose Nyland. Love me some Betty White. While in school, Sondergaard acted in plays and studied at the Minneapolis School of Dramatic Arts. As an adult, Sondergaard attended the University of Minnesota, where she joined the School of Music and Dramatic Arts. Sondergaard worked on the Chautauqua Theater Circuit in 1920. The Chautauqua Theater Circuit was tent-based traveling entertainment for rural America. The next year, she became a member of the John Keller Shakespeare Company. A successful stage actress, at one time, Sondergaard replaced Dame Judith Anderson in the Theater Guild of New York's production of O'Neill's Strange Interlude. I bring this up because in one of her later films, The Return of a Man Called Horse, 1976, she played Elk Woman, which was basically the replacement of the role of Buffalo Cowhead Woman played by Dame Judith Anderson in A Man Called Horse, 1970. There's a link below. Sondergaard's second marriage was to director Herbert J. Bieberman. The couple moved to Hollywood, but Sondergaard had no intention of acting in films. Director Melvin Leroy noticed the talented and lovely Sondergaard and signed her for her first film role in Anthony Adverse, 1936. That year, Sondergaard and our favorite gypsy mother of a werewolf, Maria Openskaya, who we discussed in The Wolfman 1941, a link below, became the first two actresses nominated for their first film role. Sondergaard won for the role in Anthony Adverse 1936, making her the 9th actress to win an Oscar. Director Leroy wanted to cast Sondergaard as the Wicked Witch of the West for The Wizard of Oz 1939. I'm not sure she would have been better than Margaret Hamilton. However, when it was decided to make the witch a hag, Sondergaard withdrew from the project. The lovely Sondergaard was also the role model for the witch/queen in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs 1937. Again, she did not do the role because of the hag appearance. Instead, Sondergaard starred with Paul Muni in the Best Picture Oscar winner, The Life of Emile Zola 1937. She had an impressive film career that included Juarez 1939, again with Paul Muni. Today's film, Mark of Zorro 1940. Film noir The Letter 1940 with Bette Davis. Dark horror The Black Cat 1941. Wartime espionage film Appointment in Berlin 1943 with George Sanders, who was the first Falcon. The Spider Woman 1943, where she faced off against Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes. The Invisible Man's Revenge 1944. Enter Arsène Lupin 1944. The Spider Woman Strikes Back 1946. Anna and the King of Siam 1946. And Road Picture Road to Rio 1947. In 1947, Sondergaard's husband was indicted as one of the Hollywood 10. Sondergaard refused to testify before the Un-American House Un-American Activities Committee and was thus blacklisted. Director Mervyn Leroy, being a better friend than most, gave her a role opposite Barbara Stanwyck in East Side, West Side 1949 to save her career. However, there was a backlash and she could not soon return to film. After she and her husband finished Salt of the Earth 1954, the couple moved to New York where Sondergaard could work on stage. She returned to film in 1969. One film near the end of her career is the aforementioned The Return of a Man Called Horse 1976. This wonderful talent died in 1985. Hey, if you're enjoying the show and getting value out of this, please subscribe and leave a review where you get your podcasts. Subscribing will let you know when new episodes come out, and it really helps the show get found. Story. The movie begins with a place card saying that the Spanish Empire covered the globe and the rich young men study the fine art of warfare, carrera. Diego, Tyrone Power, is the foppish, most popular and beloved of all the aristocrats. He is also the best rider and fencer at the military school in Madrid.
Here comes the California cockerel. 10 pesos, he clears them all.
Cleanly?
Cleanly.
Taken.
Grow wings, my friend. $10, if you please.
He also fancies the lady. One day, Diego is called to the commandant's office and told that he must leave school and return to his California home where his father, Don Alejandro Montague Love, is the alcalde. He buys wine for all his classmates before leaving. Money is of no importance to Diego, having been born wealthy. He feels California will be very boring for a man like himself. He makes the long voyage to California and first encounters a rower. The rower tells him that he hates the alcalde. Diego is shocked, thinking the man is talking about his father. After the encounter, Diego visits a small cantina. He tells the bartender he is the son of the alcalde, and the mood in the entire bar changes. He then asks for a carriage to Los Angeles. The driver shows fear when he is told that this passenger is the son of the alcalde. Diego is told that the alcalde had the man's tongue cut out for speaking out against higher taxes.
Listen, you. Fine speech or I'll cut out your tongue.
You are too late, senor. Your good father has already attended to that.
Father, what are you talking about?
I am sorry, senor, but at a meeting of the peons, this man spoke against the heavy taxes. The next day, the soldiers of His Excellency cut out his tongue.
Diego travels to his childhood home. He is taken to Captain Esteban Pasquale, Basil Rathbone. Esteban explains that Diego's father is no longer the alcalde. Esteban says he and his soldiers take care of the government. Captain Esteban constantly toys with his naked sword. When asked about swordplay, Diego begins to act slightly delicate and says he knows nothing of such things. This will be important when we get to the second Zorro film.
I'm quite sure that you'll save me a reprimand.
How could I refuse a man anything with a naked sword in his hand?
Ha ha! So a wit has come to Los Angeles. It's a foolish habit of mine. Some men play with a club or a monocle or a snuff box. Churchmen finger their beads. I toy with a sword. Do you fancy the weapon?
Oh, I know very little about it, my dear Capitan. Swordplay is such a violent business.
Diego is taken to the new alcalde, Don Luis Quintero, J. Edward Bromberg. Don Quintero is a buffoon and is clearly controlled by Captain Esteban. Don Quintero steals a champion fighting cock from a peasant. Quintero is more interested in Diego's clothes. The wife of the alcalde, Inez Quintero, Gail Sondergaard, enters the room. She is interested in spending money on fineries and handsome young men. She is quite taken by the handsome Diego. He continues his delicate act, even discussing buying fabric.
Oh, don't leave me to these barbarians. Come to the shops with me and help me make my selections.
No, you tempt me, Senora. I love the shimmer of satin and silk, the matching of one delicate shade against the other. Then there's the choosing of scents and lotions. Attar of rose, carnation, crushed lily, and musk.
Before he leaves, he spots Lolita, Linda Darnell, in the garden. Don Quintero thinks Diego will be no problem, but Captain Esteban is not so sure. Lolita is 17 and is the niece of Don Quintero and is very interested in meeting Diego. Diego leaves to visit his family at their old hacienda. On the journey, Diego meets Sergeant Gonzalez, George Regas, and his soldiers who are collecting taxes from the peasants with a whip.
Pity your poor mount, Sergeant. Such a heavy whip.
Do you think I'd strike a good mare with this? It could ruin her, break her spirit. See? She didn't flick an ear. She knows. We are collecting taxes from the peons today.
And you use that little switch on the taxpayers?
Only when they're stubborn.
Diego is greeted by his mother, Senora Isabella Vega, Janet Beecher, and a happy crew of workers. Diego is taken to Don Vega, but Padre Fray Felipe, Eugene Palette, can be heard complaining before he enters the room.
His place sets a viper, so foul and so black, ought to be alone with him for 5 minutes, 5 little minutes.
The Padre is trying to convince Don Vega and some of the other Dons to resist the alcalde. Don Vega says he was forced out of office by threats. Diego leaves the men in the room disappointed because he pretends to have no interest in politics and says that the new alcalde seems nice. He does a magic trick and acts the perfect popping jay. Later, the peasants nap during the heat of the day. A group of soldiers begin posting a tax notice saying that raw grapes would no longer be accepted as tax payments and that one of each 5 bottles of wine must be paid. 20%. It could be worse. Suddenly, a masked man dressed all in black and riding a black horse races through the town. He disarms the soldiers and forces them to replace the tax notice with a sign that says Luis Quinteros, the alcalde, is a thief and will face the vengeance of Zorro. Of course, Zorro is Spanish for fox. He carves a Z into the shoulder of one of the soldiers and chases them back to the barracks. When other soldiers arrive, Zorro speeds away. The locals are very excited. Sometime later, the alcalde and Senora Quintero are riding in an unescorted coach. The alcalde has a bag of gold that he is sending to Madrid without Captain Esteban's knowledge. Zorro rides in and frees the horses from the stagecoach. He then relieves the alcalde of the gold and Inez of her jewelry. He cuts a Z in the coach's seat before riding away. Later, frightened soldiers hang wanted posters for Zorro. One night, the alcalde is working in his office. Zorro enters the room and cuts the flame of a candle. Zorro confronts the alcalde at sword point. Zorro tells the man that he needs to leave for Spain and reappoint Don Vega. The alcalde agrees. Zorro cuts a Z into the wall before blindfolding the alcalde and leaving a sword propped against his throat. Captain Esteban finds the alcalde and thinks the man is crazy.
What's this? Are you trying to commit suicide? Speak up! What's the matter?
Esteban orders the troops out to search the ground. Captain Esteban realizes that Zorro is part of the aristocracy. Zorro, now dressed as a padre, enters the chapel where Lolita is praying for a man just like Diego. Diego tells Lolita that she should never enter a convent. He tells her it would be better to have children.
I was asking the Holy Mother to save me from a convent. Is that a sin?
The sin, I think, would be in sending you to one.
She tells him that she is not happy with her uncle, the alcalde. Diego hides his face, but she sees the sword he has hidden under his robe. Insert bad joke here. When Diego leaves, he accidentally drops the Zorro mask and a guard attacks him. Diego stabs the soldier as more men run towards him. He hides and changes into his Zorro outfit before climbing the walls and racing away at high speed on his horse. A large group of mounted soldiers give chase. Eventually trapped on a bridge, Zorro leaps his horse into the river below and rides away, all the time being fired upon. The reward for Zorro goes up fourfold. He tears down the signs and leaves the Mark of Zorro behind. Sometime later, Captain Esteban is overseeing Sergeant Gonzalez as he collects taxes. One of the peasants cannot pay his 9 peso bills. They threaten the man with a whipping and take all of his money. From behind, Zorro takes the tax money from Captain Esteban before fleeing on his horse. Zorro evades his pursuers by using a version of the hotel door gag in the wood, coming in and out of different doorways in random orders. At home, Zorro removes his outfit. He enters the mission where the Padre is conducting a mass. Diego waits in the office for the Padre with the chessboard set up. Sergeant Gonzalez and some men walk in looking for Zorro. Diego acts as if he's afraid of Zorro. Dear me! After they leave, Diego gives the tax money he stole to the Padre. Diego then reveals that he is Zorro. The Padre is to return the money to the people. The Padre wants Diego to tell his father that he is Zorro. He refuses because his father is faithful to the law. Zorro leaves another message for the people that the alcalde must leave for Spain or he will die. Diego comes to visit the alcalde's house. He explains to the alcalde and Captain Esteban that he has an appointment to ride with Inez and uses her note to get through security. The alcalde shows Diego the Mark of Zorro on the wall. Diego makes up a tale about a clever madman who killed 40 people in Madrid after giving warning. The alcalde is struck by fear. Oh dear! Diego and Inez leave for their horse ride. Captain Esteban tells the alcalde that Don Vega is a natural leader of the aristocrats. He recommends that they create an alliance by having Lolita and Diego marry.
What could be stronger than a matrimonial alliance? Royal families keep the peace of Europe in bridal beds.
Diego charms Inez and says she should be in Madrid. She tells that Captain Esteban has been urging her to leave her husband and go to Spain with him. He tells her to stay with her husband, and he may one day be there to introduce her to important people in Madrid.
Oh, Diego, talking with you is like a drink of cool water in the desert.
Oh, it's a pity. But I was just thinking how you're being wasted here. Your beauty, your gift for words, your perfect poise. You were born for something higher, something more civilized than this provincial life you're leading.
Later, the alcalde visits Don Vega and proposes a union between Diego and Lolita. Don Vega flatly refuses. Diego arrives and says he wants to go forward with the idea. Don Vega leaves upset. Diego agrees to dine with the alcalde and his family. Diego is late arriving for the dinner. He is really prissing it up. Lolita doesn't like the Diego she sees. Inez and Captain Esteban stay close to each other. After dinner, Diego does magic tricks. Lolita is completely disgusted with Diego, admiring the courage of Zoro. Captain Esteban gets hot with Diego as he hints at the affair with Inez. Inez is jealous when Lolita and Diego dance. Diego acts like the dancing tired him, and Lolita is done with him. Diego convinces Inez that if he marries Lolita, he and Inez can be seen together all the time. Later that night, dressed as Zoro, he climbs into Lolita's room. The alcalde enters the room and walks to the balcony. After seeing someone on the balcony, he says never mind and leaves. Diego enters the room without his Zorro outfit. Diego then reveals that it was him in the chapel and that he really is Zorro. He tells her also that he really wants to marry her. Diego flees before he is caught by Inez. Inez tries to sway Lolita away from the marriage. Don and Senora Vega wait through the night until Diego returns. Diego says he wants to marry Lolita. Don Vega blames the mother. Sometime later, the peasants riot because Sergeant Gonzalez gave 10 lashes to a priest who spoke out against taxes. The crowd is driven back by mounted soldiers. Sergeant Gonzalez is thrown over the wall with a Z carved in his chest. Captain Esteban catches the Padre with the stolen money. They have a sword fight, and the military man quickly disarms the Padre. He finds Inez's jewelry and arrests the Padre. Don Vega is giving Diego the business when Lolita arrives at the hacienda. Lolita tells about the arrest of the Padre under charges of being in league with Zorro. The alcalde enters his office and sees a man sitting in his chair. He calls the guards but discovers the man is Diego. The alcalde is called to his cellar where all of the casks have been opened and a Z is carved on the outside. A soldier sees footprints leading to the wall. The alcalde thinks Zorro is not human and agrees to leave. The alcalde then resigns and turns control over to Don Vega. Captain Esteban arrives and prevents the alcalde from signing the letter. He also threatens him about trying to sneak out without him knowing. Captain Esteban threatens to kill Diego. The two men decide to have a sword fight in the alcalde's office. Diego shows he is a match for the military man. After a bit, Diego stabs Captain Esteban through the chest. This thrust knocks a picture off the wall, revealing the Mark of Zorro he left earlier. Just then, the soldiers find the secret stairway from the cellar that Diego has been using. The soldiers take Diego to a jail cell. The alcalde commands all the wealthy men to come to his headquarters. Inez and Lolita wait upstairs without knowledge of what's going on. The alcalde tells the assembled men that they have captured Zorro and they will execute him at midnight. Of course, he still thinks that these rich dons are behind Zorro. Diego and the Padre are held in the same cell. Diego uses one of his magic tricks to fool the jailer into coming too close. He captures the jailer. Just then, more soldiers arrive for the execution, so Diego and the Padre remain in the cell. Don Vega says that the worthless trick-playing Diego cannot be Zorro. Diego asks if his father has seen this trick as he leaps from the cell and begins disarming the soldiers. The Alcalde calls for more guards. The peasants begin to press the outer gate of the compound. Diego rallies the wealthy men to fight the soldiers. He uses his knowledge of the house to escape out the back. He leaps from the roof and subdues a guard before opening the gates for the peasants to enter. A large Donnybrook takes place with swords and farm implements. The people win the fight, and Diego forces the Alcalde to resign in front of the crowd and appoint Don Vega to the post. Everyone is happy but Inez. Diego tells her that he will marry Lolita and stay in California. Conclusion. What I like about this film, besides the sword fighting, Basil Rathbone is amazing, is the way Diego realizes the problem and takes on the Popinjay effect to hide his feelings. He also recruits important allies rather than taking on the entire task himself. This was the last film for George Regas, who played Sergeant Gonzalez. He died soon after the film was released. In addition to Gail Sondergaard, J. Edward Bromberg, who played the Alcalde, was also blacklisted after being named before the HUAC committee by director Elia Kazan. According to IMDb.com, part of the canon of the DC comic universe reveals that Bruce Wayne was leaving the movie Mark of Zorro 1940 when his parents were killed by a robber. In an interesting coincidence, Robert Lowry, who played Rodrigo in this film, acted in the role of Bruce Wayne, Batman, in Batman and Robin 1949. Of course, Zorro and the Batman are essentially the same character. World famous short summary: a man dressed in black with a mask. Wesley or Batman? As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Thanks for listening and commenting. Beware the Moors. All right, there'll be some